This is the Unscripted Podcast.
What's up, Bob?
Sup.
You know something very enthused about that.
Hey, I'm real excited.
I can tell, Eeyore.
Woohoo!
We gonna spin the wheel today.
We're gonna spin the wheel. So if you like our spin the wheel thing, then give us a little thumbs up. You can check us out on all the platforms that you would hear a podcast, and YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, and whatever else the places that there are. We're pretty much out there, and we appreciate you listening. And so this spin the wheel thing has not been real easy on us.
I know it's, I'm not above cheating sometimes, Bob. Almost with this, but I'm thankful that we can do it.
Yep. So here goes spin the wheel. We got 56 questions and that were asked, and we're gonna put it in.
And it is number 43.
What's up with the 40s?
I don't know.
We did 44, 46, and now 43.
We need to randomize this wheel or something like that.
It's your phone.
Here's your like and here is our like and share one. If you've ever screamed at the TV while playing Wheel of Fortune, and knowing the answer, go ahead and hit that like and share, because now I understand what those people spinning the wheel feel like.
Yeah, 43. All right,
43.
Why is Chris's beard so long?
Because he's the coolest cat.
No, that's not the question. All right, here's the question. Why isn't your church as big as other churches?
That's a good one, isn't it?
It is a good one.
I suppose that depends on your perspective of the word. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that's right.
Because there's just so much loaded in that question. Like, why do you think that person would ask that question?
Well, perspective for a lot of people is reality. Like
Perception,
how they perception, yeah.
Yeah, so here's what I think about is perception is reality. So they're comparing size to success.
That's right.
Or
Why do you have a 250 member church when there's 1,000, 3,000 member churches?
Yeah, exactly.
Y'all must not be getting the blessings of God.
Right. You ain't doing something right.
You did something right. When really, I mean, the quick answer for that is Jesus said, wide is the gate, broad is the way that leads to destruction. There are many who go in by it. Narrow is the gate, difficult is the way that leads to life. There are few who go in by that narrow path.
But there's also a different answer to this.
Yeah, well, good.
And there's only one church.
That's right.
And because there's only one church, we just happen to clump up in different spots on the Lord's Day, on Sundays, different congregations. It's still it's a vision problem. When what you're doing is you're comparing it to a standard that is flawed. So if you compare it to a flawed standard, then you're never going to be able to see it in the right, you're never going to have the right measuring stick with regards to that. So when you think about, like when we use the term the church,
mm-hmm.
we're talking about the people that the Lord has added to his body.
Yeah, that's right.
We're talking about the people
Acts 2, that's right.
Right, Acts 2 and verse 47, praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church daily those who are being saved. So
right.
Once a person obeys the gospel like those people did in 6 verses prior, or 41,
mm-hmm.
do the math, and those 3,000 people, they were added to the church.
That's right. And I think that's what my answer goes right along with that. Like there's one, so this narrow way. There's this one way that you can get to the Lord,
right? And
it's not many. It's not from all these different sects of different congregations and SECTS, yeah. Yeah. And sections,
yeah.
And it's there's one way, and it's through Jesus, and we just that's why I love talking about the church, is because it's the one thing. It's
mm-hmm.
the true gospel. It's the one thing that's going to get us there. And when you see this, like the worth of having the wisdom of the church, like it's so precious. It's so, and we just take our name right out of the Bible. Romans 16:16, the church of Christ greet you. And so all we want to do is we just want to wear Christ's name.
Yeah. So when somebody asks the question, why isn't your church as big as another church?
Mm-hmm.
they're still looking at a narrow view of it because they're looking at it in the perspective of a local. Whoever asked that question is probably somebody that's looking at the Kensington Woods Church versus one of the big.
Or it's been asked to one of our members, and so our members are like, hey, how do we answer this? Or,
big denominations in town or something like that.
Mega church or what? You look at there's some denominations over here in our city that literally the church building and their facilities are bigger than the local government schools.
Yes, and it's because of. It's a different focus, right? I mean, we could build a bigger church building if we wanted to. I mean, there's no doubt. That's why we're crammed into our little podcast room here. Everybody thinks this room is big, but if they could see it on this side over here, they would really understand what's going on.
I don't think Ben likes us anymore.
Why do you say that?
Because he took away the Ben cam.
Oh, I think what it is Ben. I just don't think Ben's lived long enough to get tough skin. He's scared we're going to talk about his dating, his kind of.
He didn't want to be seen with us.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly it would taint his his reputation.
But back to the question.
Yeah, we could build real big buildings and have these huge things going on.
But ultimately, what we're got to look at is number one, what's the definition of the church, right? Because that's where the question really lies at. Why isn't your church bigger than other churches? Well, if there's really only one church,
to identify it.
Yeah, if there's really only one church, then the rest of them. What's the deal? Right?
You're either the church or you're not.
You either are or aren't. And so,
and the good thing is the Lord gets to decide that. The Lord's the one who adds us to His church.
Yes.
So Bob and Chris don't get to decide that. But however, if the Lord is the one who's going to add someone to the church, He's given us everything that we need for life and godliness through the knowledge of Him who called us. He's given us everything through His Word, so we can. He's not the author of confusion. He's given us what the church is. He's given us definitions of it and what it looks like and how to be added to it.
And I was, to be honest with you, I was talking to a guy from one of these big churches in town, I don't know, a week or two ago, something like that. And we're just having a lunch together and we're naturally segued into this kind of conversation. And I said, so what's the attraction?
No, Chris, you naturally segue them into these conversations.
Whatever. Either way, we're there.
One reason I love you, yeah.
But I said, so what's the draw to a church like yours? And he grew up. He said, I grew up going to the church right down the road from this little church down here on the right from the church building. I don't want to say its name, but the one
on our street.
Yeah, on our street down here. He said, I grew up going to that church, and that's one denomination. And now I'm a deacon over here in this church at this denomination. And I said, so what's the attraction then? And he said, well, I'd like to tell you that they're coming for the truth, but that's really not what it is. He said, we just have so many ways that people can be involved or people can be, we have so many different ways that people can be, I forgot the word he used, but they have so many different things. Like you ride by there sometimes on Tuesday nights, and the only reason you can tell is when it's daylight savings time and it's dark at 5. You can ride by. I've seen them ride by there, and you could see in their foyer, and they're in there doing yoga, and aerobics in there. And so I'm not saying it's wrong to use the church to do.
Is this what drew you to this guy? Was yoga?
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. I was stuck, and he helped me get out of my spot. But no, I mean, I assume it was the ladies in there. I mean, I was driving. I just happened to see them because they're all jumping around in there. And
what's going on?
What's going on over there? And I thought, what in the world is going on? And
Chris is doing yoga with this guy, and so he gets into this conversation. He called it lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Don't I look like the yoga titan, squatting dog or whatever
squatting
it is?
Dog.
Ain't that one of the positions?
Squatting dog.
Yeah, and so
now we'll go out of Hero 1 into squatting dog.
But here's the thing:
go ahead.
that we've said this before, but the church is a byproduct of the truth.
Amen.
And not the truth, a byproduct of the church.
Yeah, it's great to have programs, and if you can get people involved.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Through yoga or through whatever kind of Meals on Wheels, or if you can get people involved in the church by working out or whatever it is, shooting guns, knitting, sewing, get them involved. But ultimately, if the truth is not taught, it's still poison.
Yeah, and you're just a social club.
That's right.
And so that's where the real line gets, drawn at, is like, what's your objective? So the objective of the church is a community of people working together to help get each other to heaven and everybody around them.
Every part does their share, yeah.
Yeah, every joint supplies a need, Ephesians 4.
Ephesians 4.
And so what we've got to see as the church then is in the perspective of what is the reality of most churches. Most churches ride hobbies. You understand what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if you're the faith-only crowd, you're going to talk about that all the time. If you're the prosperity gospel camp, you're going to be, that's what
Health and wealth, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be you're going to be spending time in that camp. But if your motive is to get people to heaven and keep the saved, there's no doubt about it, you're going to have smaller numbers. It's just the Lord said that you will always be in the minority. I mean, that's what, when you said the broad way and the narrow way, that's another way of saying that the minority is going to be the ones that are doing the right thing, period.
That's right. And you look at the church as a whole, it's really sad, that there's not more in the Lord's church.
Not more what?
Not more people. It's so precious, and that's one reason why me and you picked up our families and moved to South Mississippi. It's a mission field.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we can be part of it here.
That's right.
With such great people. But ultimately, when you think about the reason why if we grew the church to the point, like it's this euphoric kind of idea where everybody's Christians. Well, if that were the case, then we would be in the wrong. And the reason why is because the Lord said that'll never happen. You'll always be in the minority. So whenever we're not standing out differently from the world, then we have got to really take a look at ourselves and wonder, what, why, how, whatever. What is it that we're doing now? If we're attracting the world in droves, how is that the case? Because it was always going to be hair, tooth, and nail. And
you think about this. We strive after truth on this podcast. People don't want to hear the truth. And Satan, he will use country club mentalities to conceal the truth, however he can do it. And in fact, you think about this, like, people don't want to sit here for 20 minutes or 45 minutes and listen to the truth. What they want to do is, we want to scroll on our, platforms or whatever, and we want to find things that are entertaining to us. And things that are entertaining, the heart of the gospel, the first heartbeat of the gospel is God loved the world, he gave his son, to die for us. The second heart of the gospel is, if you're really going to follow me, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. That's the heartbeat of it is love, but those are the two lungs, I guess, if you were to define it. Christ is the one lung, he died for us. The second lung that draws in the breath is us living our lives for him. Yeah,
and so you think about then, I was talking to Brother Charles Johnson. He's 90.
90-something.
Yeah.
Once you hit 90, it's something.
Right, exactly. He was telling me about them starting the church in Leakesville Sunday night after we had our
in their living room.
Yes, he was telling me about it, and he was telling me, and he was telling me a story about a guy that they were working with his wife, and they would go out there. She was a cripple, and they would go out there.
I've heard this story, yeah.
And he said he'd go out there to do the Lord's Supper with them, and the guy would take the Lord's Supper cup and pour it through a crack in the floor, and they converted her but never converted him. And he said, I said, how did you meet her? And he told me, and I think he said at a gospel meeting, she came to a gospel meeting or something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, I said, how long did they last in your day? And he said, if it was only a week, he said people would be upset. And so, and it's because
that's the shift.
That's the shift, right? Once we got TV in our houses.
Entertainment.
So here's something interesting, okay? The reason why every channel on TV is above number one, channel 2, 3, 4, when we were kids, now it's 2 point, it's all digital, right? But do you know where that comes from?
No.
The government never thought TV would take off, so that's why you tune your radio from 88 point whatever it is up to 107.9. That's the highest number, because everything over that number 2, channel 2, is the 200 mark. So they said it'll never take off, so y'all can have whatever you want. You can pick whatever bandwidth you want to and broadcast on it. Said there's no way that TV will ever take off. People, we've got radio, and it's sufficient for what we need, and it'll never go any further than that. Wrong.
Yeah, look at the government's wisdom.
Yeah, right. Next time you want to trust them. But
exactly.
So you think about this then. There was a shift in culture. Like, I read that, I think it was Brother N.B. Hardeman. I hope somebody watching will correct me on this, but they had a debate at the turn of the century in the Ryman Theater in Nashville. All right, the newspaper reported on, it was over instrumental music, and the newspaper reported on how many people were there, what was said during the debate, and how many people like stood on the streets and everything. Like,
I want to debate over instrumental music.
What's the newspaper? Nashville Gazette or something like that?
Yeah.
Whatever it is. I mean, just think about that, right? Think about the paradigm shift that we've had, where people, as a whole, that's one of the
what they're interested in.
Yeah, that's my boys. They have to read their Bible for 30 minutes every day before they can play video games or watch TV or whatever. And it's always a challenge, because you just ask with them tonight that's today's Tuesday. Well, Wednesday, tomorrow night, just ask Aiden or Liam. Well, they're not in your class anymore, are they? But
yeah, I'll see them.
Yeah, just ask them what they read their Bible about today. And almost always, they'll pick something that's entertaining to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they'll pick, a David and Goliath type story.
Yeah.
And me as a father, I'm trying to not scold.
Why are y'all not studied up on all these?
Right, genealogies.
Right.
Know the genealogies.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge.
Oh, I know. So Carson last night, he told me, he's like, Dad, so my kids are only half as good as Chris, or 2/3 as good as Chris's kids, because my kids have to read 20 minutes a day, and before they can get their stuff. And so Carson asked me last night, he's like, Dad, can I get a 30-minute extension? I only got to play 30 minutes of my hour of time on
he's wanting to bank.
Stuff. Yeah, he's trying to invest in the bank. And I said, I'm not answering that right now. And literally, you took a soccer ball and busted your 6-year-old brother in the face at point blank range with it, and now you want an extension on your time. But however, it's constantly on their mind, just like what you're saying. But the other thing it's a challenge, like you said, but there are rewards to it. Like Coleman, all the funny or negative things I could say about Coleman and his personality and all these different things, he's growing up and they're just real weird when they're 9. But he made a decision that he was going to read in succession. He was going to continuously read, not like read different parts of the Bible. But I was like, come on, why don't you get in the New Testament and read? But he devoted. So he just finished the Old Testament completely all the way through.
Good job, Coleman.
Reading, 20 minutes a day. And it took him a couple of years, to do it. But, he committed to it. And now I don't necessarily think that he's got everything he needs to know about the Old Testament. But there are blessings in just having a 20 minutes a day, 20-minute a day time frame.
Well, then, so let's go back then. How do we equate this to the church then, right? So we got 20 minutes that we got to think about with regards. I mean, we got, you got 20 minutes that you're making your kids read. I got 30 minutes I'm making mine read. Well, why is that the case for? Well, it's because we have this understanding that there's only for whatever reason, there's a certain amount of attention span. And so you think about what Jesus is going to spend all this time as on his public ministry, and while he's in his public ministry, what he's going to do at the end, he's going to come to Jerusalem and he's going to weep. He's going to weep because
he wanted to gather them under his wing.
Yeah, nobody's listening to me. Nobody's nobody, and not that he's like throwing up his hands in exasperation, but he knew when it comes to Acts 2, there's only 120 some people, right? Yeah, I mean, out of all the the loaves, the fishes, the miracles, the raising Lazarus from the dead, all the stuff that had happened, it's only 120 people that Jesus
that's right.
has on his side.
Yeah, John 6, there was a bunch. There was a big exodus there.
Man, and I'm going to tell you, if you're listening and you haven't, you need to listen to Bob's sermon on, what was the date that you did last Sunday? What was the number, the date?
What are you talking about? The fishing one?
The fishing one you did Sunday morning.
Yeah, that was what?
Whatever it is. Go back to our Kensington Woods Church of Christ page and find the one that's on fishing.
March 13th.
March 13th.
Fishing for wisdom.
Fishing for wisdom. Awesome lesson. You did. And so because of those things, what happens is Jesus knew that people were falling for the loaves and the fishes.
Mm-hmm.
That's no different than what this guy told me. He's like, I wish that they were coming for the truth.
Yeah, and so how can you have a day where you feeding 5,000 people? They're listening to you, and then Jesus feeds them. The next day, he won't feed them a bite.
Right.
Why is that?
Exactly.
It's
right.
because groups alone, and just coming for us to be together and to eat 5 loaves and 2 fish, for me to get a handout from the church or this program or whatever, is not what Jesus was about. He was about the truth. He said, labor for the food that does not perish, the food that's going to lead to eternal life. I am that bread.
Mob mentalities kill Jesus, and mob mentalities will send the world to hell. And it's for the same reason, is that ultimately the reason why the church is, your church is not as big as their church, is because God planned it. He knew that, not planned it, he planned for everybody to be saved.
Yeah.
But he knew that in prophecy he would tell us that's not going to be the case. So he tells us that not to discourage us. But that does not mean this, Bob. That does not give us an out. That doesn't give us an out to think, well, I'm going to be in the minority. I may as well just put my head down.
Not tell anybody.
Yeah, put my head in the harness and turn my head down and just plow my road. That's not it. That is not what the Lord wants us to do. So if you're a part of a church, of the Lord's church, that's in your mind, perception, whatever it is small and dying, you got 2 options. You can sit around and bellyache about it and complain and look like the rest of the world. Because the rest of the world belly aches and complains. The dudes on the news, they tell us that Ukraine is Putin snuck across the border now and he started a war. We've got the coronavirus. Apparently, it's not that big of a deal anymore.
Well, yeah,
but for the last year,
invade somewhere and there's no more coronavirus.
They're going to stack up the papers and tell us everything that's happened in the world bad, and then tell you to have a good night.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's just that's like what is it? The word oxymoron almost. Right. And so if you're in a congregation of the Lord's church and you're not thriving, that's okay. But it's not okay tomorrow. Because here's the deal. If you realize that there's something that needs to be changed, you got to realize you're never going to be as big as the denominations, because you don't get to play the games that they get to play. But you've got a responsibility to change it.
And you're holding something very precious in your hands.
And just think about what one person can do to the dynamic of a congregation.
Yep. We'll talk about that right after the break. Life in general is about decisions. Every decision that you make has consequences, and you're tethered to every single one of them. Jesus gives us this awesome opportunity that you don't have to make all the decisions in your life all on your own. You see, he invites you to come to him, to learn from him. Jesus gives us this perfect example, and he tells us in Matthew chapter 11, he says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm meek and gentle in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, my burden is light." We have so much to learn from Christ, and he gives us this example of saying, if you really want to learn from me, take my yoke. You see, yokes were used back in Bible times to put 2 animals together to pull a load or to pull a cart or to plow ground. And you would put an ox together, or you would put 2 mules together, and they would pull the load together. And that's what Christ offers for us, is he's offering to pull the load for us. Christ invites us to come to him, and we're to be his followers, disciples, learners, people who have yoked in with him. and he builds a community around us called the church. The church is to be made up of people who God have looked at their hearts. You see, the world wants to paint a picture of everything that would divide us. The church has painted a picture of the things that unite us. That Christ, he builds this community that when we've yoked in with other people, they may be different from us, but we can learn from each other. What a beautiful thing that it is when we can have difficult conversations. There's no conversation that the church can't have. And that's what Christ wants from us, is he wants community that's strong, that's yoked in together, that learns from each other. And most importantly, that learns from Jesus. And he invites us to come, take, learn, and find. So we're talking about these people and the dynamic of the church. There's a close friend of mine who I met through camp, and I've really been trying to disciple this young lady. And so we do studies with through Zoom or whatever now. And
that's safe.
Yeah, that's right. Safer.
Yeah. Well, there's a record button.
That's right. Well, I'm having the study with my wife in the room. So
either way.
Yeah, either way. So, anyways, this young lady had she lost her mom a long time ago, and several years back. And so, there's always that struggle. Some of those things. It's like, why don't you just talk to your mom about it? Well, she doesn't have a real good relationship with her dad either, but she's flat out. She's smart. She's witty. She's going. Anyway, she's an engineer. So, but she's moved to an area. Her job has made her move to an area where the church is not real predominant. It's not really big or whatever. And so she's always had, she comes from a huge college group where there's like 100 and something people just in the college group alone. And now she's at this 15 to 20 member church in this little area. And I told her, I said, you got that. You can really change this church, and you can be a good part of it. And I said, you can either dive in, or you can really invest in these people, or you can, pull away from it and you'd be like, oh, well, I'm so sad. Well, this church, it's amazing what these people do. They realize that they're small, and we understand these things. Every Wednesday night, they do their Bible study. They have these things, and then the whole church goes to this pizza joint every single Wednesday night, and they all eat together. And so this restaurant knows the church group's coming, and so they build these relationships with these waitresses and the business and all this kind of stuff. But there's like 15 or 20 people, and so this girl, she's in her early 20s, right out of college, but now she's eating with like 60-year-olds and 80-year-olds, and she helps teach Bible class, for some of the younger kids. She's getting involved in that way. But like all these older people, they think she's the coolest thing ever because she's invested in the church. Mm-hmm. But like she said, these people have poured into her, and she's learned so much wisdom from these older members. And it's like, because she eats supper with them every week. She goes to church with them all the time, and they've become her family. And so wherever you think that you're small, there are still grave benefits. You need to invest in the church. Don't look at numbers. Jesus had 12.
Yep, and he stopped at 12.
Yeah, for a reason.
For a reason. I mean, he could have had as many as he wanted to.
Yeah,
and God stopped at 12 with Israel. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So here's the thing. Then let's go back to our conversation. When you think about, Bob, the significance of the church, right? I mean, you think about what Paul says. And he's trying to draw the Ephesian church kind of together. Mm-hmm. In Ephesians 4 and verse 1, he says, "Therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling which you were called." That's the gospel, right? 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 14 says we're called by the gospel. So walk worthy of the gospel. Be worthy of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Make it valuable in your lives.
Man. What a calling.
With all lowliness and gentleness, long-suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. The unity of the Spirit. That's what unifies us. That's, Jesus said, sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. The Spirit is what inspired these pages that we have here. So you try your best. There is, why? Verse 4, there's one body. There's one Spirit. Just as you were called in one gospel, right? One called and one hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. So Paul is tying all these things, these ones. There's one body, one Spirit, one Lord, one faith, one system of faith.
One.
Yeah, there's oneness in all these things. And if you turn back to Ephesians 1:22, we can understand what he's talking about. And he has put, what is the body? He has put all things under his feet. Jesus gave him, Jesus, to be head over all things to the church.
The church.
To the church, which is his
body.
The
question is this. Was the body of Christ separated on the cross? No. It should not be separated today.
That's exactly right.
And it doesn't break in. Now, Daniel 2:42 talks about how that this kingdom would be, it's going to break in pieces. That's not meaning that there's going to be all these denominations. What that means is it's going to break in pieces and it's going to consume. That there's going to be the church not just centrally located in Jerusalem. There's not going to be one temple. The church is going to be worldwide.
Elementally, it's the same. So you can take gold, you can take iron, Fe. It's got a certain atomic weight. All these different things that make it distinctly specific.
It's iron.
That it's iron. It doesn't matter how many you break it into pieces. It's still iron. So it doesn't matter how spread out the church is, whether it's here or whether it's 20 miles up the road at Collins or whether it's 3 miles, 8 miles up the road at the, wherever.
Yeah, 6 hours up the road in another state or 2,000 miles across the ocean.
Elementally, it's still the same because the church is a byproduct of the truth and not the truth a byproduct of the church.
There's one body.
And so you think about this idea then that we've got to see the church as this awesome and, such a holy place that, like you said, you think about this young lady that went into this situation as kind of a Debbie Downer to some degree, but look what she's gained
so much from it. Her life is so fulfilled from it.
I mean, just think about what she's gained from it. And so you go back to us as understanding what the church is. It's his body, right? It's his body. You use this analogy of, Christ's body wasn't broken on the cross. 1 Corinthians 5, I think it's verse 17 says that Christ, who is our Passover. Well, when they ate the Passover lamb, you remember what they had to do? They had to eat it whole.
Yeah, no broken bones.
They couldn't boil it. They couldn't, they had to eat it whole. And as a matter of fact, if you couldn't eat it all by yourself, get somebody to come with you. And so
none of it remained till morning.
None of it. And so there's this unifying principle that God has shown from the beginning. That Christ is the Lamb. Christ's body's not going to be divided. So in Matthew 16 and verse number 18. When Peter is having this conversation with Jesus about who he is, Jesus kind of...
Yeah, who do men say that I am?
Yeah, who do men say that I am? And he's asking these questions about kind of his rock star status at this point. What's going on? And they answer various things, John the Baptist, Elijah, one of the prophets, whatever. But they go through this scenario, and then he just asks him, who do y'all think that I am? And Peter stands up, and he says, well... Verse 17, verse 17, verse 16, Simon Peter said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I say to you that you're Peter, and on this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. What's he building it on, Bob? Peter?
No.
He's building it on this bedrock truth, right? This very foundation, 1 Corinthians 3, that no man hath laid that is not Jesus Christ. So when Peter understood that Jesus was the Christ, that also meant that he understood that he was going to be the head of the church, Ephesians 1:22, that he was going to be the Ephesians 5 Savior of the body, that he understood all these things that Peter, when he said that, and because that's why Jesus could say, Peter, just the fact that you understand that I'm the Christ, I'm the one that's here, I'm the one that is going to die for the church. That's what the church will be built on, the truth. Not the truth coming from the church.
Yeah.
The fact that you understand the truth, and the truth will what?
Set you free.
Make you free. So the truth, Peter's showing us here, is a byproduct. I mean, the church is a byproduct of that truth. So we are born again, and even Peter's the one that uses that term later on. Born again, not a corruptible seed. Which are like, what does he use? Like precious gold and silver.
You weren't redeemed by those things, but with the precious blood of Christ.
That's exactly right. And so what you're seeing here then is that Jesus is revealing. So you can't be part of the church.
And also one thing that Peter said in that verse, he says, through your aimless conduct. You weren't born, or you haven't been redeemed by these things. Oh,
what Peter said in I thought you meant here in Matthew 16.
No, but what he says later on in talking about what we're redeemed by, and he's like, this aimless conduct that's passed down by traditions from your fathers. I'm just going to read it real quick. So that's 1 Peter chapter 1.
Yeah, hold on. Go ahead.
And he says, verse 18. There's two awesome parts in this, because 18 and 22 both kind of allude to this. Knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, like silver or gold or yoga, right? Okay?
Squatting dogs.
I added yoga, all right? You weren't redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold from your aimless conduct received by tradition of your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ. So you're not redeemed with things that would be through your aimless conduct. If our conduct in the church today is just on things that are aimless, and we can build whatever kind of scenario that we want, or whatever kind of club that we want, but it's all aimless conduct if it's not pointed to the blood of Christ, the truth, and the truth is what's going to set us free through that blood. So then it talks about he was foreordained from the foundation of the world, but later on in verse 22, since you have purified your souls in obeying the truth. Through the Spirit, in sincere love of the brethren, love one another fervently with a pure heart, having been born again, not a corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the Word of God. You got to go to the truth, which lives and abides forever. So, and the end of verse 25, now this is the word which by the gospel was preached to you. And so you have to go through the truth. So, next week we're gonna what do you think about this? What do you think about continuing on this truth factor, and we're gonna look at what the true gospel is, because there's a lot of watered down versions of this, and we're not afraid to give you the truth and what it actually is, and what true salvation is.
Listen, and Bob, I'm perfectly fine with that, but we're going to divide some herd here with that. You understand?
We
that,
are.
Right? And I'm okay with that. I mean, we literally have the same equipment that Joe Rogan uses. Mm-hmm. You understand? And he's just sitting in a room by himself.
That's right.
But we're not going to come on here smoking dope and carrying on foolishness and talking about worldly things. We're going to talk about other worldly things. And so next week,
there's a lot of interesting people out there, but we want you to know Jesus.
Exactly right. Exactly. And I've met a lot of them, but nobody's more important than knowing Jesus.
We're going to help you get into the Lord's church, into that way, the truth, and the life, and we'll study on that next week.